Hi, I'm Emma. Remember that when we want children reading, either out loud or to themselves, we want them reading as if they're talking, because the print is really just talking on paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach children to hear the smaller parts in words and blend them, to be able to do that so quickly that it's automatic when they see the word, that they can say the word, and so that it's automatic so they can scan ahead on that word and then scan ahead on the next few words to be able to read as if they're talking. So we scaffold it, but even on the green level, when we're just doing words created with s, at, put, in, we want that automatic recall, so do speedy decoding. We put these into the words so we have a scaffolded approach with the readers. So the readers again bring it all together so that they understand that writing is just talking in print. Use the high frequency words as well as your speech sound pics. And understand with your SSP book tier that this is what we're trying to do. We're getting the brain to tell the eyes what to do and to pass the information back. So this is the order in which we go from the brain telling the eyes all the way through to fluency. But even in the first level, when we're going the, at, sat, whatever, the brain still needs to break down those individual words. It still needs to see that this word is sip, sip, but to be able to do it quickly enough, they don't have to orally sound it out. To get to that stage, they have to recognise the individual sound pics, to be able to practice blending them, and to see them as words and to say the word, along with high frequency helpful words, so that they can get to the stage of being able to look at this and their brains are scanning the words and scanning the line to go, the pin is in the tin, and then you can say, oh great, the pin is in the tin, and then you do it as if you're talking. So it really is, think about those small stages to even get to this line, to read this as if it is right talking on paper.
If you've got a child and when they come to this they're still going I, am, at, mat, then what that means is that their eyes, even with am, aren't scanning ahead on that word quickly enough to go I am mat. Because if you think about the eyes and the brain, what they want to be doing is they want to be looking at that. Well, that's a helpful word, I. They want to look at that and their brains need to scan that ahead to be able to say am, scan that ahead to say mat. So it just means that they've not practiced enough to be able to do that quickly. I am mat. Now, as well as when they do I am mat, as well as saying, right, okay, now that's brilliant, now we're going to do it quickly, so as if we're talking, because this is talking in print. So when we're doing this, we need to say it as if we're talking. And that's why, again, when we do I am a mat, you know, the way we talk when we're reading, we want children to say it with expression and whatever, because we want them to say it as if they're talking. Not that we necessarily talk in the same way as, but anyway, we want to do it as if they're talking. And we don't talk, we don't say, we don't do it like that. That's what the brain needs to process. So if they're still at the stage of that, remember that really they're not ready to be doing that in a sentence. So let's speed their brain up so they can. So let's say that sentence there, what you might have done is you might have put am, I, mat, whatever on there. So you might spend a couple of minutes first of all saying, right, in your mind, decode these. So they're going am, at. Okay, you familiar with them? Okay, I'm going to point to them really quickly. You ready? What's the word? So they're quickly going mat, am, I, am, mat. So their brain hasn't got time. Sorry, so you're speeding their brain up so that their brain is looking at that and scanning that word. But just remember, we've got to be able to scan that word before we can start to scan ahead on sentences and do reading for meaning. So then you might put them together, and it doesn't matter they're in the wrong order, because we want the brain to be able to go mat, am, quickly, without having to go at, mat, am, mat, am, Okay, now read this, because it's in a sentence, so we're getting the brain to go that. I, mat, So when you've got the proper sentence, I just couldn't fit it all in there. So when you've got this, I am a mat. Oh, listen to that. Did that make sense? I am a mat. It does. That's the one that makes sense. I am a mat. And then here, they haven't got Tam and Sam, so you might have added Tam and Sam there. In fact, before you've even started, what you might do is put all the words from that book on here, so they're doing it, so they're familiar, so that then when you come to the book, they're not going I am, because they're familiar with them now. So now they're going, okay, are you ready? So you're decoding in your head, I am Tam. I am Sam. Or they might go, I am Tam, I am Sam. Yes, now say it as if you're talking. And you might even role model and do it yourself. I am Tam. I am Sam. And that's when they're starting to understand why the dots, you know, why the full stops are there and whatever. It is a mat. We want the children to be able to do that so that they can progress to, oh, that does make sense. It is a mat. And that's when you look at the picture. Now let's put meaning and expression into it, whatever. Sam sat. Oh, Sam sat. Let's look at that. You know, all of these words, just put all of the words from this book on there so that they're familiar, so that they can go straight away. Mat, am, I. You want to know that their brains are going at. They're not just memorising it, because that's whole language, that's just memorising words and whatever. You want their brain, you want to know that their brain is looking at that and scanning it, at, mat, but so quickly that they can just say it and they're talking in print. Hope that helps.
So always refer back to the skills, and remember that for children to be able to read as if they are talking, as if they're, you know, as if the writing is just talking on paper, and to be able to read that as such, a lot of the children, you really need to break down those stages so that they get to that stage. So it really depends on phonemic awareness, being able to hear in the word sit, for example, that it's it, to understand what can represent that and what can represent that it and the and in that order. Then be able to recognise them on print as it and put them together as the word sit. Then they'll be able to see that word sit just on its own, so that they know, and they're not memorising the word sit. We don't want that to happen. We want their brain to be able to quickly go it, sit. We want to be able to see 2 or 3 words next to each other and say them in order without having to orally sound them out. So like sit, pit, pants. And that's why we do the rap, so that their brains can do that really quickly. And to do the rap, you've got to be able to very quickly look at that word and to be able to scan ahead in that word to be able to say the word quickly. So that's a really good that's a really good tool to use, so that they're doing it out of context. So they've really got to look at the word and go sat, pat, da, 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 da. But then also we use the book so that we're putting it in meaningful context. So then they're doing it and they're going, the ant sat in the tin. Okay, what is it? Oh, the ant's sitting in the tin. And you bring the comprehension in and what have you. Oh, the ant's sitting in the tin. Why do you think he's sitting in the tin? What else do you think is in the tin? And all the rest of it. But you're helping, by letting the brain get to that, you're actually helping the brain to be able to speak, to be able to see that as talking, to be able to link talking with that print. And that's when you get the comprehension, because we comprehend a lot more when we're talking and making sense. You know, you do use disjointed words and it's a lot more difficult to get meaning. We talk to get the meaning, get the imagery. So that's the stage we want for the children in books and when they're reading. But you have to scaffold. With a lot of children, you have to really, really carefully scaffold, and don't think that just because you've got a book that's got 4 words that they should know because they're the words in their level, sat, pat, tin, whatever, don't think that that means they should be able to point to it and read it. If they're still sounding them out and they're still doing it slowly, they still need more time practicing that rapid decoding and the rapid recognition of the words. And that's why I want you to go to readaustralia.com/speedy.ssp.htm, because I'll have lots of videos on there which the children can just watch with headphones, and they just track it quickly, and it's speeding their brain up so the brain can look at ant. And even though they'll recognise it as ant, if we were to ask them to break it down, they know it's because it's ant, ant. If you get it right at the green level, which is not just about just recognising those sound pics and going out, whatever, it's about the understanding of encoding and decoding with just using these 6 sound pics, so we can bring it all together and build confidence. If you get that level right, then introducing the new sound pics so they can blend them and whatever, and using the readers and scaffolding means that you'll get children reading for fluency and comprehension a lot more quickly. Now, some people try and cheat, and they try and teach sight words, so the child looks at the word and memorises the word. Now, we use high frequency words so that the children can read and write more meaningful sentences, but the idea is that by the time they get to blue, they can decode any of these words. Their brains can decode them. They don't have to memorize the whole word, because if you use SSP, you can decode all of every single word in the English language other than about 50. In the whole of the English language, that's it. So don't cheat and think that if you teach a child to memorize 5 different sight words and then they're on the page and then you get them to say them over and over again with meaning, that is reading. That's called the whole language approach, and it does not work. It doesn't work for most children. So please don't overstep the foundations of a good reading and spelling brain. Sorry, I don't have any PM readers or whole language-based readers on hand. This book you're about to see is a Fitzroy, which is a fantastic book.
This is actually what happens with PM readers. What happens is the children can't decode the words on the page, like Sally's new shoes, whatever. They can't decode it because they haven't learnt that code yet. So what people do is they rely on the parent or the teacher doing it with them. Oh, what do you think? Jet is... they look at the picture. What do you think's happening? Whatever. What do you think this word is? As if somehow that will help children to read. So what they do is the parent might say it first, like Jet is 6, Jim is 10, and they go the whole thing. And if a child's got a good memory, they go to the school the next day and they go, Jet is 6, Jim is 10. But their brains aren't seeing the words and understanding why that's Jet is 6. They don't understand that. They're just memorising the words. And children can memorise a lot of words, but the trouble is, what happens is it then gets to a stage where they just can't do it. It's too many, you come to a stage where there's a lot of words on the page and the child is stuck because they just can't remember that many. Imagine how many words there are in the English language. So we have to teach children to decode every single word in the English language. So it doesn't matter what's on the page. They can read it without looking at the picture. They can just use this and they can read it for understanding as if they're talking in print. Now, if you don't do that, what happens is when you come to a word that the children haven't memorised, then they don't know how to work it out. So they might look at this and you might say, oh, what do you think they're doing? It starts with a P. What do you think? Picnic. That's not reading. That's guesswork. And it doesn't all come together other than for...
And even the children who can do it like this, you're actually making the journey a lot harder.
So this is what happens with the child when you haven't taught them the foundations of reading and spelling. Here is a word that is a real word. And this is what happens when a child who struggles with reading anyway does when they see a word that they haven't memorised. Okay, so how would you tackle reading that word?
I've got no idea.
Now you can watch the progress of a lot of high school students who have struggled because they haven't got this foundation. There's nothing wrong with the child, they just learn differently and they haven't been given the chance to actually learn to read and spell in the way they need to learn to read and spell. If you look at the two brains at the top, basically a lot of them will have a brain that looks, if you were to scan them whilst reading, it looks like that. Using Speedy SSP, and we're using it as an RTI approach and what have you, the brain will modify brain networks so that it would scan after intervention like that. So we're going to have a whole year of getting all of these children reading and spelling with confidence. There's no trickery, there's no magic, everybody can do it. It's free because you just download all the resources, but just follow their journey to see they are going back to what they should have had in prep and year 1. The frustrating thing is that there are so many children, teens like this, who have actually they can blend, they've got, there is nothing wrong with their brains. They just need to put it all together. And even within a couple of minutes of doing some work with this student, he was picking up what I was asking him to do with the spelling and whatever. So this student is going to progress really quickly. But what happens is, when you've got a child who, has got a little bit of personality and whatever, what's going to happen when they fail is that they're going to play up. You're going to have children who don't want to go to school or who are playing up in the class because they're avoiding having to look stupid and whatever. This child is by no means stupid. This child is absolutely going to be reading and spelling confidently next year. You'll watch his journey. But I just want you to see that we have to change the way we teach, not expect children to adapt to the way we're teaching. By the time you get to the blue level, this is what you would call PM readers 20 and above at least, because they've learnt over half of the alphabetic code already, and they're using it in context, and they're also able to quickly decode and to be able to read for meaning and comprehension, and to comprehension do it for fluency. Their brain doesn't have to leave the page to look at the pictures and illustrations or whatever to try and guess the meaning. Their brain is at the stage of being able to use that with just the words. That's what we're doing. We want children to be able to read as if they're talking. It's just talking on paper, and at the same time as talking, the same as they do orally, they're understanding what they're reading. So just think that these 4 levels enable you to get to children to reading Harry Potter and things like that. Because at that stage, and in actual fact, as well as the explicit teaching, which is here, you're also using the speech sound clouds, which means that by the blue level, they're really being exposed to the whole of the alphabetic code. That's every single word you could possibly meet in the English language. They will be able to decode and read. So if you take your time and just really focus on doing this, you'll have children who are reading Harry Potter before they've left prep and understanding it, because they will be reading as if they're talking in their heads.